Hello and welcome back to the game room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 2017 of you beautiful people checking out this video here today. Well, we are getting to almost current year of subs, and I couldn't thank you guys more. For today's video, I had an idea. These are not necessarily unknown sequels. These are not sequels you should skip. Instead, my idea is kind of, these are the redheaded stepchilds of their particular franchises. Now, some of them are very good. Some of them are not. And we're going to get into that. So if that sounds interesting to you, let's check it out. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Alright, so I'll preface this with, there are certain games that I would typically be mentioning here, like God of War Ascension and Gears of War Judgment, but I just spoke of those games recently, so these are ones that I haven't talked about to death. So let's start off with one that I actually think is a fairly decent game when compared to what people say of it. And that game is Mass Effect Andromeda. So I picked this up day one, and I thought the combat was exceptional. I thought the storyline was a little meh. The bugs, yes, they were kind of unforgivable, but compared to Mass Effect 3, which was such a letdown compared to what I was expecting going into it, I actually quite enjoyed Andromeda for what it was. My biggest complaint with that game is the fact that even though you go to another galaxy, really it seems like the only different race that's there is this one new race, and then everything else is kind of the same. There's not much, you know, the exploration's better, I think, as far as Mass Effect games go. It was a enjoyable 40 or 50 hour time that I spent in it. And it's one of those things where I highly recommend checking it out. So this is one of the few games, like a lot of these games I'm probably not going to recommend. This one I do. This one is better than you heard. It's better than I thought it was going to be. Nowhere near the heights that the second game was. And then as far as kind of the big build that led up to the trilogy. And unfortunately, because the game was so poorly received or just didn't work out, I think the series is pretty much dead. Yeah, the facial animations definitely got worse. That goes without saying. But I enjoyed playing the game. I thought the combat was fun enough. The storyline was decent enough. And it didn't have that same letdown that I got from Mass Effect 3. So that game, actually better than I thought it would be. Alright, now here's one. Now some of these are going to be kind of DLC type games, but back in around 2010, 2011, there was a big craze of let's take an existing game and then put make it a zombie game or make it this or make it that. And the one I'm talking about is Infamous Festival of Blood. So it technically is DLC, but it is a standalone game. So you can download Festival of Blood without needing to play Infamous 1 or 2. And the nice thing about the Infamous collection, if you ever pick this up, is it not only comes with the first and second game, it has a free download code for Festival of Blood, which I still haven't used to this date. I have not played this. But one of the nice things about it is that it essentially, Cole gets bitten and is slowly becoming a vampire throughout the game. You don't have to deal with the morality of killing people versus not killing people. In this game, you eat people to get your health back. And it's just, if you wanted a nice little short story in the Infamous universe where you're playing as a vampire, this is the game for you. And just one of those things that you don't really hear much people talk about, also partially because Infamous 3, in my opinion, was such a letdown. So Festival of Blood technically is the third game, whereas Infamous 3 is not, or Second Son. They don't even call it Infamous 3. I hate it when franchises do that. Just number the damn entries. But yeah, Festival of Blood, definitely worth checking out. And one of those ones where I think it's only downloadable on PS3. I don't know if they ever did release the ability to get that on later consoles. Alright, so here's one that is much in line with that. So remember I said there's zombie versions of certain games? Well, Red Dead Redemption Undead Nightmare does just that. Like, it has nothing to do with the main story. You can completely play this separate of the actual game. And one of the cool things is you can actually find Bigfoot in this, and just random zombies around. It's just, it's cool. It's cool. I kind of wish they still did stuff like this. I don't really think they do anymore. This was an actual standalone game that you could buy separately that is not connected to Red Dead Redemption, but it is. And was just a fun time. And yeah, it got overdone. I mean, really, that part of the reason I didn't play Festival of Blood was that I had just played Undead Nightmare. But if you were looking for a reason to spend some more time in these worlds, and this is before the whole DLC craze or the games as a service, living game experience really came to force outside of things like MMOs, it was a fun experience and a fun time. Now, here's one that I was genuinely surprised that when it came out, it was so well regarded, and it's still well regarded to this day, and that is Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Now, this has really little to do with the main Metal Gear Solid franchise. It stars Raiden, which before this game, I think people's opinions on Raiden were much less than after this game came out. Now it's kind of agreed upon that Raiden's a badass. Mainly because this was one of the games that really cemented Platinum Games on the map outside of stuff like Bayonetta, at least to the general audience such as myself, because I'm like, oh wow, they made Raiden cool? Damn, that must be a developer that knows what it's doing. And honestly, that's kind of my main thoughts with this game. It's over the top, it's big time action, it's crazy, and like I said, it makes Raiden a legitimate cool character, which if you had told me that back in 2002, whenever I played Sons of Liberty, I would have slapped you. There's no way. He almost ruined that game experience for me. But hey, there you go. Who knows? It's funny what a good game can do. Now, back to another game that is DLC, so I don't have the actual copy of it, but that would be Alan Wake American Nightmare. Now, for the longest time, I was waiting for Alan Wake 2. Nothing came of it. The first game ends clearly on a cliffhanger. And finally, they announced American Nightmare, which was not a sequel. It was a download-only game that was more of almost a prequel or a side story. It's a time loop type game where you go through the same sequences multiple times and things slowly change throughout it. And to be honest, I didn't enjoy it that much, and I never ended up finishing it. Part of it, too, the fact that I hate not having a physical copy of it, which is why I never picked up Alan Wake 2. Still haven't. Probably won't. But yeah, American Nightmare is just another thing to be aware of. And that's kind of what these games are like, is that they kind of get lost in the shuffle. And even though this isn't a full-blown sequel, it's still very cool. And one of those things where I'd like to go back and play it and finish it now, just because it has been so much time. And really, that's kind of what happens with me, is eventually, you get that taste again to be like, let's go back through and let's actually see what it's like. And who knows, maybe Alan Wake 2 somehow will get a physical release one of these years. Now, here's one that was very interesting because the first two games of this series were absolute bangers, and I love them. And then they announced that the third game was coming, but there actually was another game coming before the third game that was made by a different developer. And it was a prequel. So already, it wasn't being made by the developer I knew I liked, and it was a prequel, which meant there was no stakes or anything. And that game is Batman Arkham Origins. This was made by, I think, just an internal WB studio. It wasn't made by Rocksteady, which, current day aside, back then, this was right after Arkham City came out, and we knew Arkham Knight was coming out, or at least was rumored that it was coming out. But this game came out before them, and I feel like when this game came out, it was more being geared towards getting an online presence for the Arkham series instead of continuing a really cool story. And I never picked it up, I never played it, I recently got it because of all things, this game is not expensive. $20 is not expensive, but I feel like $20 is expensive for an Xbox 360 game. So I wanted to get it. I wanted to check it out finally, because I never finished Arkham Knight, which is strange. And it got me thinking, how bad was Arkham Origins if I couldn't get through Arkham Knight? So let me know. Have you guys played Arkham Origins? Is it worth checking out? Definitely with all of the controversy of the Suicide Squad game, it had me thinking about some of these earlier games that maybe now in retrospect aren't as bad. And maybe I'd like it more than Arkham Knight. And who knows, I should probably give Arkham Knight another shot, because Arkham Asylum, one of my favorite games. Arkham City was an absolute blast. But moving on to the next Xbox 360 game that I don't know what it was about this. I was a big fan of Halo, but when Halo 4 came out, you know what's interesting? I say I'm a big fan of Halo, but I really was a fan of Halo Reach, because that was the only one I really bought when it was current. But when Halo 4 came out, it wasn't made by Bungie, it was made by 343 Studios, and it just didn't look interesting. It was resetting the franchise. It seemed like it was going off in its own direction. They were setting up a new trilogy. They had all this more storyline beats going with Cortana and humanizing Master Chief. But the cardinal sin they did is they changed the damn sword effect, which I didn't even find out until I played until I played Halo 5 years later. But to this day, I still haven't gone back and played Halo 4. In fact, if I remember, the reason I even got this was when Jen and I first started dating. I feel like she picked this up for me in Mario Party 8 of all things, just randomly. And I was like, wow, that right there, that's a keeper right there. So yeah, Halo 4, let me know, is that worth checking out? Because I really I don't have much interest in checking it out. But maybe one of these days. I mean, who knows? We could add these to the backlog. Now, this is one that when it was announced, I was super stoked for, but I bought too many N64 games that burned me, that I waited for the reviews, and I was glad I did because it got absolutely terrible reviews, which at the time I was so upset about, and even to this day, I still have this inkling like, can I fix him? Can I fix it? And that game is Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero. An actual game that takes place with Sub-Zero, who's one of my favorite characters next to Reptile, and it's not a fighting game, it's kind of an action 2.5D platformer type thing, but just, it looked terrible, based on what people said. The review said it controlled awful, the gameplay was bad, the storyline was bad, and it really stopped me from ever buying any of the side mission or the kind of the Mortal Kombat Special Forces with with Jax and Sonya and the other various games that came out that weren't just the fighting games. I didn't buy another Mortal Kombat until Mortal Kombat 2009, and part of that was because just all of them kept getting absolutely thrashed. In fact, I have Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance for the GameCube, and I don't remember how I got it. It was like it just showed up in my collection one day. I still, to this day, do not know how that happened. But yeah, Mortal Kombat Mythologies, I'd like to check it out, but man, am I worried that it's going to be very, very terrible. So let me know, am I right on that? Okay, now this is one that, yeah, there's a lot of strange entries in this franchise, but none more so than this game in my opinion, because it literally came out the same day as another game in the franchise that was the newest entry, and that is Assassin's Creed Rogue. So Rogue is supposedly taking place sometime between Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed 4. But the day it came out, it was only available on the old console, so only on the Xbox 360 and I think the PS3, but it was not going to be on PS4, it was not going to be on Xbox One. The new game was Assassin's Creed Unity. Now, Unity was heavily being touted as another multiplayer game. So it had 4-player multiplayer. And to be honest, it was not getting great reviews, and I didn't pick it up. And I also didn't pick up Rogue. I finished off with Black Flag. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? We finished the Desmond story. Black Flag was enjoyable enough. I don't know if I really want to go back into another game that's just doesn't like that. Unity did not look good to me. And Rogue, I didn't want to buy a game for an old system. Why am I going to pay $60 for the old system when I have an Xbox One? I think I had Xbox One at the time. So I skipped it. And I really never went back to it. I know they did a re-release of it recently. And yeah, there's another Assassin's Creed game I could be talking about here. I think it's Liberty or something of that nature. Yeah, just a strange entry in the franchise. The fact that they released I guess it was the 7th installment that came out on the Xbox 360 generation, which is nuts. Because, yeah, you had Assassin's Creed 1, 2, Revolutions, 3, 4, and yeah, there you go. And I have all 7 now. That was I picked that up. That was a Christmas gift. Okay. Now, this is an interesting one because I knew nothing about it. It really was in that time where I was in the dark phase of my World of Warcraft, and that was Dirge of Cerberus Final Fantasy VII. So, news to me, back in the mid-2000s, there was a lot of retconning and expanding upon on Final Fantasy VII. I guess this was around the same time when Final Fantasy X came out. They had X-2, and I guess with Final Fantasy VII, this is when Crisis Core came out. They did Advent Children, they did the Dirge of Cerberus, and it's funny. This is why I knew nothing of Zack. I knew nothing of these storylines. As far as I was concerned, Final Fantasy VII came out and was done. And the thing about Dirge of Cerberus is it stars Vincent, who is incredible, one of my favorite characters in the first game, the original game. But it gets nothing but trashed upon. And so, and I think it's for good reason. Now, unlike Crisis Core, which everyone universally loves, they got a remake, you do not hear any kind things about Dirge of Cerberus. And once again, another game that I wanted to pick up, to have it in the collection, to eventually try it and see what it was like. But I'm scared. I'm scared with how bad it possibly is going to be. Because even when I picked it up at the game store, the guy's like, oh man, bad game. Or just like, it was like a sigh of like, are you sure you want this, man? So we'll see. Now here's what I'm throwing here in this video just because it's fun and such an unusual circumstance, and that is Castlevania Legacy of Darkness. So this game came out in the same year, or at least within a calendar year or 365 days of Castlevania 64. This is essentially the same game. They just added 2 additional playable characters, and I think they tightened up a few things. But when it came out, I remember seeing it and thinking, wow, they had a sequel come out that quickly? I didn't know it was the same game. I only found out years later that it was the same game with new additional content, new characters. But a really unusual thing to happen on the N64. I mean, nowadays, we see these games come out that have added DLC or these complete editions all the time. But back in 1998, I want to say, or 99 when it came out, that was unheard of. So just a very strange circumstance. And because of it, this game has become extremely collectible now. So a while back, I think I picked this up for maybe $100 complete, 2018, something like that. And it's definitely, I think it's tripled since then. It's gotten really ridiculously expensive thanks to Castlevania collectors. So one, I'm glad I picked up because I'd like to honestly play it, because people who like Castlevania 64 say it's not that bad always point to this edition and say you should play this one because it's pretty good. So I'd like to play it and see if it is, because the other 2 characters are pretty cool. All right, now here's one that I was very upset about, because the funniness about this is when the game came out, I thought that this was that game was supposed to be the original, like XCOM Enemy Unknown. I thought it was going to be a first-person shooter, but it wasn't. It was a tactical game. It was incredible. Well, the next game to come out was the Bureau XCOM Declassified, and this is a first-person shooter. And this, ironically, it's almost like I had a Mandela effect. I could have sworn this is what that game was going to be like. It's exactly what it looked like in the previews, or at least when I skimmed the preview and I saw it at Game Informer. And so, no one talks about it. You don't really hear much about it. I've heard it's a decent enough game, so it is one I'd like to give it a shot. I think it was on Xbox 360 as well as the PS3, but I picked it up on the PS3. It's fairly cheap, and just one of those things where I love the XCOM universe, so I'm very intrigued at checking it out, but it is another one of those things where, what the hell, why? Why are you making a first-person shooter? And I think, did Firaxis make this too? Like, was it made by the actual company? I know 2K did, but just, yeah, just unbelievable that instead of getting another which we haven't gotten another XCOM game, I'm still waiting for that Terror of the Deep remake, because they clearly hint at it at the end of XCOM 2. Sorry, spoilers. All right, getting to the last few here. So another one that is an oddity is not Metal Gear The Phantom Pain. I'm actually talking about Metal Gear Ground Zeroes. So if you guys remember when Metal Gear 5 came out, it came out in 2 parts. There was one part that was really like a 2-hour preview, and that was Ground Zeroes, and then The Phantom Pain came out maybe a year later. And I'm talking about Ground Zeroes. And just Ground Zeroes is such a weird thing. Like it's literally a paid prologue that... imagine paying for a demo. That's kind of what Ground Zeroes was. And luckily, I mean, there hasn't been another Metal Gear Solid since then. You don't count Metal Gear Survive. But a weird, you know what's funny? There's a third game I could talk about with this video as far as oddities, but we'll talk about that if I do a part 2, because I still have more things to talk of. I still haven't played Phantom Pain to this day, but I did play Ground Zeroes, and it was one of those things where I enjoyed it enough, but it just, I don't know, it was, the fact that it was split in half like that really turned me off. So let me know if you guys have actually played through both. It's one of those things where you don't really, you don't really hear about it. I don't even know if there was ever a version of Metal Gear Solid 5 that came out with Ground Zeroes attached. I'm sure there had to be. They released so many damn versions, but just another oddity to talk about here. Now, this is one that I know they expected this game to be more popular than it was, and they were trying to launch off into a new direction after what they did in Uncharted 4, and that's Uncharted Lost Legacy. Now, I loved Chloe, but I don't think they set up Naomi well enough in Uncharted 4 to really get behind having her be the new sidekick in the series. Just because you never really get one over on her. In the entirety of Uncharted 4, she beats the ever-loving snot out of you and your brother, and is the kind of the goon of the main villain who disrespects her and treats her like crap, and then she just walks off and says, alright, I'm done. But you never get a satisfying beat, as it were, over her. And then then they announced Lost Legacy, where you're playing as Chloe, who I love Chloe. She was fantastic in the second game and a great addition, but then Naomi is her sidekick, and it just felt a little like, yeah, I'll pick that up when it's $20. And I did. And even then, it's still sealed. That's another game I should add to the sealed thing. But nothing really came of the series, and just, there hasn't been much of Uncharted since then. They moved on to The Last of Us, and because this had to have come out, yeah, The Last of Us Part 2, and then who knows what they're doing now. But yeah, just another one that, such a strange game. And then the last one, this really is more about the social surroundings of it, and that is Beyond Two Souls, the second game made by Quantic Dreams that takes place, so Heavy Rain, this game, and then there's Detroit Become Human. And the main thing that's, not the main thing, but you have Elliot Page in this game back before they were Elliot Page. And it's just weird. How do you talk about this game now? Because it is a photorealistic game before that transition happened. And just in general, even before that news came out, it was just a strange, strange game to come out. And that's saying something when you consider that that's all this company does. But I believe the way it works was with Beyond Two Souls, you have the ability to transfer your essence from the kind of the living realm and the past, or the bad. I don't know. To be honest, I haven't played this one. This was another one I wanted to pick up and talk about. But just of all of the Quantic Dreams games, by far the one that kind of is the low point in their catalog. And then now, given the circumstances, I don't even know if they're allowed to talk about it. So who knows? We'll see if I get in trouble. But yeah, that's what you get for this week, guys. Those are 14 more games that are the redheaded stepchilds of their particular franchises. Some of them are great, and some of them are not. And yeah, we went over them. So let me know what you thought of the video. Let me know if there's some other games like this. And if you like the topic, we will definitely be doing it again. As far as backlog progress goes, we are killing it. I knocked out the first Max Payne yesterday, working on the second Max Payne. And holy hell, someone should have warned me as a father of a young child what that beginning of the game looked like. Apparently, it's common knowledge amongst all these PC snobs, but not for me. But I'm enjoying it. I gotta say, I probably think that I enjoyed, even though the first game is janky as hell, I think the first one so far for me has been more enjoyable than the second one, even though the second one controls a lot better. There's no autosave. There's no autosave. I learned that the hard way. But anyways, that's what you get for this week, guys. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. Once again, thank you to all the new subscribers. Thank you to all the new people who check this out. We are under 300 watch hours away from getting full monetization, which is unbelievable. I can't believe it's happened this quickly. For years, I've been averaging 1,000 to 2,000 watch hours, and now we're at 3,700 for the last 365. Incredible. Can't thank you guys enough. Thank you all for commenting, liking, sharing, subscribing. It means the world to me. I love all of you, and as always, I'm so happy I got a hold of you. Take care.